You need to listen to this. There's a reason you keep going back to it, even when it makes you feel hollow, even when it steals your energy, your time, your soul. Because what if I told you that your addiction to pornography isn't random, that you were chosen, and something is trying to keep you from waking up? This isn't just about lust, it's a spiritual war, and you're the battlefield. Chapter 1: The Hidden War Behind the Screen, expanded. Every time you reach for your phone, every time the screen glows in the dark, you think you're alone, but you're not. You feel it, don't you? That cold, silent tug in the dead of night, when the room is still and the light from your screen casts shadows on your face. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't knock. It slides in, subtle and familiar, a whisper, a craving. And before you even realize what you're doing, you're scrolling, clicking, watching, again. But this isn't just habit. This is ritual, and you didn't create it. There is a war, an invisible one, playing out every day, every night, behind that screen you keep so close to your body. But it's not a war of weapons. It's not physical. It's spiritual. It's psychological. The addiction is not the enemy. The enemy is the force that wants you addicted. You see, pornography isn't just a website. It's not just a video. It's not just pixels and data and dopamine hits. It's a portal, a spiritual snare, dressed up as pleasure. Because once you're hooked, you're no longer fully present. You're no longer fully you. And that's the point. There's a hidden system, intelligent, deliberate, ancient, that knows something most people don't. Your sexual energy is sacred. It's powerful. It's creative. It's divine. It's the force that can give life and destroy empires. And if that energy is awakened, if it's reclaimed by you, the chosen, then everything changes. You see, if you're listening to this, you're probably not like everyone else. You've always felt a little different. You question more. You feel deeper. And somewhere inside, you know, you were made for more. But that very awareness makes you a threat. So the system does what it always does with threats. It seduces, it distracts, it divides. They didn't come for your mind directly. No, that would have been too obvious. They came for your desire. They wrapped it in pleasure and wrapped that pleasure in shame. So now, every time you indulge, you hate yourself just a little more. Not enough to stop, just enough to stay silent. Do you understand how sinister that is? Because what they truly fear is your awakening. When a man or woman awakens spiritually, they begin to see. They see through the distractions, through the noise. They unplug. They stop consuming. They stop obeying. And most of all, they begin to create. And this system, it cannot afford creators. It only thrives on consumers. Docile, addicted, numbed out beings who chase pleasure and avoid purpose. That's why this war is not about sex. It's about sovereignty. If they can control your desires, they can control your direction. If they can shape what you crave, they can decide what you pursue. And if they can keep your energy leaking out night after night in front of a glowing screen, then they never have to worry about you rising. Because spiritually, you'll be asleep. Mentally, you'll be dull. Emotionally, you'll be empty. Physically, you'll be drained. But worst of all, you'll be convinced that this is normal. That's the darkest trick of all. They've normalized the chains. They've glamorized the cage. They've turned the poison into candy and made you beg for another dose. But somewhere deep inside you, if you're quiet enough, you can still hear it. The voice. It's not loud. It's not angry. It's ancient. It's the part of you that remembers who you were before the screen, before the shame, before the cycle of escape and regret. That voice knows you weren't meant for this. You weren't meant to be reduced to a reaction. You weren't meant to give away your sacred energy to pixels and strangers and fantasies designed to drain you. You were meant to build, to protect, to love, to fight. You were chosen. But the moment you were chosen, the moment you were marked for something higher, you became a target, and the weapon they chose against you was pleasure. Because nothing disarms a warrior faster than comfort. Understand, the people who built this system are not stupid. They know that chains made of steel will cause revolt, but chains made of dopamine, chains made of orgasm and fantasy and loneliness, those are chains you'll never try to break because they feel good until they don't, until you wake up feeling heavy and empty, until you can't look yourself in the mirror, until you realize you haven't really felt alive in years. And that's when the war gets real, because now you know. Now the screen doesn't just glow, it watches. Now the addiction doesn't just numb, it feeds. And now you have a choice. You can keep pretending it's harmless, keep giving away pieces of yourself to the void, or you can wake up. You can take back your energy, take back your vision, take back your soul. But make no mistake, the moment you choose that path, the attacks will come. Temptation will surge, doubt will whisper, loneliness will scream, because the enemy doesn't fight you unless you're a threat. So if the battle intensifies, take it as confirmation. You're on the right path. The hidden war is real, but so is your power. And it's time to remember what they hoped you'd forget. You were never meant to be a slave. You were meant to be sovereign. Chapter 2, The Curse of the Chosen. Those who are called suffer the most, not because they are weak, but because they were never meant to live an ordinary life. You weren't born for average. You weren't made to blend in, to be numb, to drift through existence like everyone else. That's why your temptations are louder. Your nights are heavier. Your cravings are deeper. Your inner wars are more violent. Because you carry something the world fears. Not just talent, not just intelligence, but spiritual fire, a flame that was ignited long before you were born. It's been passed down through blood, pain, memory, and destiny. You were chosen, not by luck, not by accident, but by design. And from the moment you entered this world, the forces that keep humanity asleep saw you. They marked you because they knew if you ever woke up, if you ever reclaimed your energy, if you ever walked in your true calling, you would shake the very system they built to keep others enslaved. So what did they do? They didn't fight you with weapons. They didn't silence you with chains. No, they seduced you. They offered you pleasure, but not pure pleasure, not divine union, not sacred connection. They gave you its twisted counterfeit, pornography, self-pleasure, digital desire with no soul. They knew that if they couldn't kill the fire inside you, they could at least drown it in dopamine. They could smother your spirit with shame. They could loop your mind in a cycle so addictive, so private, so silent, that no one would even know you were dying inside. You would smile, work, socialize, pretend, and then return to your corner, alone. Glowing screen, repeat. This is the curse of the chosen. Not that you're addicted, but that you know you're not supposed to be. There's a voice in you, a relentless voice that keeps reminding you, this isn't you. This isn't freedom. This isn't what you were made for. And yet, the cycle continues. You see, most people don't have that voice. They're not haunted by guilt. They don't feel the inner ache after the high fades. They don't sense the spiritual weight of every relapse. But you do, because you're different. You've always known it. That's why your battles are more intense. That's why the temptations show up right when you're on the edge of breakthrough, right when you're about to change, right when you're about to rise. It's not random. It's strategy. You're being watched, not by the divine, but by the dark. Because when a chosen one rises, everything around them begins to shift. They stop chasing. They start creating. They stop consuming. They start leading. They stop begging. They start commanding. And if there's one thing the enemy fears, it's a man or woman fully in control of their energy. Why? Because sexual energy is not just about pleasure. It's power. It's life force. It's sacred fuel. And when it's not leaked into the void of pixels and fantasy, it becomes unstoppable momentum. When you retain that energy, something begins to change in your eyes. People can sense it. They feel your presence before you speak. They respect your boundaries without explanation. You radiate something that can't be faked. Inner mastery. But that kind of presence requires pain. You will suffer. You will burn. You will fight cravings that feel like they're stitched into your soul. Because every part of the system wants you to fail. The websites, the algorithms, the loneliness, the shame, even the silence of your room is designed to echo your despair. But the truth, that suffering is proof that you're on the edge of something sacred. Pain is the scream of your higher self saying, we are so close, don't give up now. The curse of the chosen is not that you're trapped, it's that you know you're caged, and the key is right in front of you. But picking it up means walking away from everything that used to comfort you. It means war, with your flesh, with your mind, with the old version of you that just wants another hit, another high, another escape. But if you can hold the line, if you can sit in the fire without reaching for the familiar, If you can stare down the temptation and say, I remember who I am now, then the cage begins to melt. And with every act of resistance, your fire grows. You stop being a victim of the curse. You start becoming the breaker of it. Because here's the real secret they never wanted you to know. You were never meant to live with this curse. You were meant to transform it, to burn it into wisdom, to alchemize your weakness into power. And once that happens, once your fire returns to you, you don't just walk free. You become dangerous. Not in the violent sense, but in the sense that you can no longer be controlled, manipulated, broken. And that kind of person, they change the world. So yes, the curse is real, but it's also the invitation. It's the fire that tests the gold. It's the battle that bursts the king, the queen, the warrior. You are chosen, and that means you will suffer. But that suffering is not your prison. It's your prophecy. Chapter 3, The Demon in Disguise. You think it's just you, alone, in your room, late at night, giving in, again. But what if I told you it's not just you? What if I told you that behind that screen, behind the illusion of pleasure, lurks something darker? Something that doesn't just feed off your clicks, but off your soul. It doesn't wear horns. It doesn't crawl out of shadows. It comes smiling, glowing, pixelated, offering a kind of high that feels like heaven, but ends in a shame that feels like hell. This is the demon in disguise. It doesn't need to possess you because you open the door willingly. And each time you do, you lose a little more light. Let's stop pretending this is just a bad habit. It's not just about discipline or impulse control. This goes deeper, much deeper. You are in the middle of spiritual warfare, but the battlefield isn't out there. It's within you. Every time you watch, you're not just entertaining a fantasy, you're making a transaction. And the currency? Your time, your focus, your creative energy, your power to manifest, your connection to the divine. Bit by bit, moment by moment, you're feeding something and starving something else. That thing you feed, it grows stronger. It tightens its grip. It whispers sweet lies like just this once. You deserve it. Everyone does it. But it never stops at once, does it? And what's worse, it starts to change you. Not just your habits, but your heart. You start to see women as objects, men as tools, love as a joke, connection as inconvenient, stillness as unbearable. The body becomes a toy, not a temple, and the soul forgotten. You walk around with a fog in your head, a hollowness in your chest, a weight you can't explain. You laugh, you work, you act normal, but inside, you're unraveling. Because the demon doesn't take everything all at once. It's smarter than that. It's patient. It takes your fire piece by piece, your drive, your vision, your purpose, until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize who's staring back. The light in your eyes dimmed, your posture weighed down, your aura drained. And all the while, the world tells you it's normal. Don't feel bad. Everyone's doing it. But that's the trap. The normalization of addiction is how the demon hides. Because if everyone's enslaved, then no one believes there's another way. But you feel it, don't you? That this isn't you. That something's been hijacked. That you were made for more. That's not guilt. That's your soul trying to scream through the noise. That ache in your chest, that voice in your head, that's not weakness. It's evidence. You haven't lost your light completely. It's still there, buried beneath layers of numbness and shame, but burning, trying to get out. Here's the truth no one will say out loud. Porn is a parasite. It doesn't give, it takes. It drains your life force. It fragments your mind. It alters your brain chemistry. And worst of all, it rewires your spirit to seek counterfeit intimacy instead of real connection. And once you're addicted, you don't just crave the content, you crave the escape. Because facing your real life feels too overwhelming, too painful, too empty. So you run, back to the screen, back to the numbness, back to the demon, and it welcomes you, every time, with open arms and sharpened claws. But you know what it fears? Your awareness. Because once you see it for what it is, not pleasure but a prison, you begin to break the spell. The demon thrives in darkness, in secrecy, in silence. But when you speak out, when you resist, when you shine light on the truth, you start to reclaim your authority. Because this thing, it doesn't own you. It never did. It only borrowed your power because you didn't know how much power you had. But now you do, and it's time to take it back. No more lies, no more illusions, No more chains disguised as comfort. You weren't made to serve the screen. You weren't made to wither in shame. You were made to create, to connect, to radiate. And your sexual energy, it's not a curse, it's a gift, sacred, holy, creative, a portal to the divine. The demon doesn't want you to see that because a man who understands his sexual energy is a man who can't be controlled. He becomes magnetic, focused, grounded, connected to purpose, not pixels, connected to heaven, not habit. This is your awakening. This is your line in the sand. This is your exorcism. No rituals, no priests, just truth. Brutal, freeing, unshakable. You are not dirty. You are not broken. You are not too far gone. You are called. And everything you've lost can be restored. Your mind, your body, your spirit, your strength. But you have to see the demon for what it is. Not pleasure, not relief, but a thief. And from this moment on, you don't feed thieves. You starve them. Would you like to continue with chapter 4 next in the same tone and structure? Absolutely. Here's the 1,000-word expanded version of chapter 4, Spiritual Blindfolds and Demonic Agreements. Ever notice how right after you indulge, there's that silence? Not peace, but a cold, heavy silence. Guilt creeps in, shame wraps around you like a weighted blanket, and deep inside, something feels wrong. Not just morally, not just mentally, but spiritually, like something sacred inside you just got robbed. That feeling isn't random. It's not a glitch, it's a signal. Because every time you give in to that screen, that image, that moment of secret pleasure, you're not just doing something you chose. You're participating in something you don't see, a ritual, a silent exchange, an invisible transaction between your spirit and something darker. It's not about the act of masturbation or watching porn in isolation. It's about the energy transfer that happens beneath the surface, a kind of spiritual contract you never realized you signed. And the ink? Your life force. Here's what they don't teach in school, in therapy, or even in church. There are forces in this world that feed not on your body, but on your frequency, your light, your essence. And these forces, call them spirits, entities, energies, systems, don't care if you believe in them. They're ancient, they're strategic, they don't need your belief, only your participation. Every time you click, every time you release, every time you go into that trance, you hand over a piece of your spiritual authority. Not by words, but by agreement. Because consent isn't always verbal. Sometimes it's energetic. And when you choose momentary pleasure over long-term alignment, that's an agreement. You're saying, I will trade clarity for confusion. I will trade strength for sedation. I will trade my power for 5 seconds of dopamine. And the spirit world responds. It says, deal. And suddenly, you feel the shift. Not just physically drained, but spiritually clouded. Your mind isn't as sharp. Your intuition becomes dull. Your prayer life evaporates. Your dreams become more chaotic. Your emotional reactions get louder. Because each session doesn't just release tension, it releases access. You open the door, and once open, something walks in. Not with a bang, but with silence. Not with fire, but with fog. You stop feeling convicted. You stop hearing the inner voice. You stop discerning what's real from what's artificial. This is the spiritual blindfold. At first, you see clearly. You know the truth. You know it's wrong. You know it's weakening you. But after the 5th time, the 15th time, the 50th time, you start to lose sight. You justify, you rationalize, you normalize, you say it's just a phase. You say, at least I'm not hurting anyone. You say it's better than doing worse things. But deep down, something is missing. Your spiritual eyes are covered. Your perception is dim. Your light flickers like a dying candle. And the worst part, you forget who you are. You forget that you were once powerful, that you once had fire, that you once felt alive. You were made in divine image. You carry a soul that resonates with purpose, with clarity, with radiance. But addiction doesn't want you radiant. It wants you reliant. It keeps you numb so you can't rise. It keeps you busy so you don't reflect. It keeps you hungry so you don't remember. Because the moment you remember who you are, the blindfold falls. And when it does, you'll see what was really happening all along. You weren't weak. You were targeted because you carry light, and light threatens darkness. That's why the attack was so early, so consistent, so customized to your wounds. Because if the enemy could get you to bond with your chains, you'd never think of flying. So here's the truth, the one you already feel in your gut. Porn is not harmless. It's a spiritual anesthetic. It dulls your inner senses. It severs your soul's antenna. It separates you from the divine. Not because God moves away, but because you drift in shame. You stop praying, you stop dreaming, you stop creating, you stop believing. Because the shame builds layers, and those layers become walls. And behind those walls, you isolate, you decay, you forget. You forget how powerful you are when you're clear, how magnetic you are when you're pure, how unstoppable you are when you're aligned. But those chains don't have to stay. Every contract has a cancellation clause, and in this case, it's awareness. You're not helpless, you're not stuck, you're not damned. You are called, and you have the right to revoke every agreement you ever made in the dark. But you can't fight what you still flirt with. You can't defeat what you defend. You can't heal what you keep hiding. So speak the truth. Admit what it's done to you. Admit what it's taken. Admit that this isn't just a physical habit. It's a spiritual battle. And that battle doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. The more aware you become, the more power returns to you. Your light gets brighter. Your discernment sharpens. Your spirit starts to rise. The blindfold begins to tear. And the agreements, they start to lose their grip. Because demons thrive in secrecy, but they flee from exposure. They can manipulate you in the dark, but they can't hold you in the light. So bring it to the light. Confess, repent, reclaim. Not out of fear, but out of remembrance. You're not broken. You're not unworthy. You're not ruined. You are the chosen. And the moment you stop feeding the lie, you start feeding your soul again. And your soul, it's been waiting. Chapter 4, the energy they don't want you to understand. Let's be blunt. The reason they don't teach you this in school, the reason it's mocked online, the reason people call it a conspiracy, is because it's one of the most dangerous truths a man can learn. Semen retention. To most, it sounds like a joke. To others, an outdated belief. But the ancients knew something we've forgotten. They knew that the fluid you're so quick to waste isn't just a byproduct of pleasure, it's the essence of power. Every drop contains potential life. Think about that. It holds the instructions to create a new human being. Do you really think that level of creative power has no impact on your energy, your focus, your destiny? They don't want you to know this because once you do, once you feel it for yourself, you become impossible to control. Let's break it down. When you ejaculate, your body releases a flood of dopamine. It feels good, yes, but it also tells your brain, mission complete, purpose achieved, no need to keep evolving. But when you don't release, something changes. Your brain doesn't get that job finished signal, so instead it stays alert, focused, creative, hungry. Testosterone begins to rise. You walk differently. You speak with more presence. You look people in the eyes. You take action on goals you've been procrastinating for months. You start to embody what most men have forgotten: masculine potency. Not toxic masculinity, not aggression, not domination, but the calm, steady, primal force that builds nations, protects families, leads with strength and compassion. This isn't superstition. It's biology. It's neurochemistry. It's ancient truth. And it's exactly what modern society is designed to suppress. Because if you wake up to the energy that retention unlocks, you're no longer passive. You're no longer easy to sedate with entertainment, junk food, porn, or antidepressants. You become active, driven, alert. Your energy doesn't scatter. It consolidates. And here's the truth they really don't want you to know. When you practice semen retention consistently, not in shame, not in fear, but in alignment, you begin to radiate something that can't be faked. Magnetism. People notice. Women look at you differently. Men feel your presence. Opportunities start to appear. Not because you're doing magic, but because you're no longer wasting the one thing that anchors your power, your life force. This is what every spiritual tradition hinted at, but modern culture mocked. The Taoists called it Jing energy. Hindus spoke of ojas. Mystics described it as the inner fire or divine spark. And what do we do with it today? We drain it, casually, chronically, alone in the dark, with nothing but pixels for comfort. But you already feel the difference, don't you? After days of retention, your mind feels sharper. Your eyes look clearer. You wake up with more drive. You speak more intentionally. You feel more grounded in your body. That's not placebo. That's energy. When you stop leaking energy, you start building it. You begin stacking a force inside of you that changes how you walk into rooms, how you pursue your purpose, how you even see yourself. It's not always easy. The urges come like waves, the temptation whispers. But each time you say no, each time you transmute that energy into discipline, focus, art, training, prayer, meditation, you grow. Not just in body, but in spirit. You start feeling like a king, not because you dominate others, but because you've finally taken command of yourself. And this is where it gets deeper. Retention isn't just about physical benefits, it's spiritual warfare. Because the more energy you carry, the more light you generate. And the more light you generate, the more darkness is disturbed by your presence. That's why the attacks intensify when you begin this journey. That's why the dreams get weirder. That's why the temptation hits harder right before you level up. That's why your old patterns try to seduce you back. Because your old self is dying, and the system built to keep you docile, it knows what's coming. You were never supposed to be numb. You were never meant to scroll endlessly. You were designed to create, to build, to protect, to lead. But none of that happens when your energy is scattered to the wind. Retention isn't about being a monk forever. It's about mastery. It's about conscious control over what was once unconscious. It's about knowing when to hold and when to release. Not out of addiction, but out of awareness. When you reclaim your energy, you reclaim your life. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing to be entertained. You stop numbing yourself. And instead, you start moving with purpose. You start breathing with depth. You start living like the chosen one you were always meant to be. So let them laugh. Let them doubt. Let them mock what they don't understand. Because the truth is, they're not mocking you. They're mocking the part of themselves that knows you're right. You carry something they forgot, something sacred, something powerful. And now you're remembering. Chapter 5, The Mind is a Mirror of the Soul. The greatest lie ever sold is that what you watch doesn't affect who you become. They told you it's harmless, that it's just a habit, that it's better than going out and doing something worse. But the truth? It is doing something worse. It's changing your perception of reality itself. Because your mind is not just a sponge, it's a mirror. And what you show it over and over again becomes the reflection it believes. Let me put it plainly. Porn doesn't just hijack your eyes. It reprograms the entire operating system of your soul. You think you're just watching? No, you're absorbing, encoding, wiring neurons to fire in patterns that disconnect you from real life. Every click, every scroll, every climax, it's teaching your nervous system that intimacy is performance. Connection is instant gratification. Love doesn't require effort, presence, or depth, just stimulation. And the mind begins to adapt. Synapses rewire. Expectations shift. Your baseline for arousal is no longer a real person with warmth, breath, spirit, and soul. It's a screen. And the longer it goes on, the deeper the trance becomes. What used to excite you no longer does. So you seek more extreme content, hoping for the same high. But it's never enough, because the soul can't be fed with shadows. What you're watching isn't just nudity, it's a mirror cracking in real time. You stop seeing women as sacred. You stop seeing their soul. They become objects, pixels, tools for your release. And what you may not realize is, you stop seeing yourself as sacred too. There's a quiet, devastating shift that happens after years of exposure. Eye contact becomes uncomfortable. You begin to avoid deep relationships. You fear real vulnerability. You feel numb, disconnected from your own body. You've trained your brain to avoid emotional intimacy, to substitute connection with dopamine hits. But your soul doesn't want dopamine. It wants meaning. And the more your mind indulges in the illusion, the more your soul suffers the consequences. You know this. You feel it. After the screen goes black, after the momentary pleasure fades, after you're left alone in the silence, you feel that haunting question echoing in the emptiness. What am I becoming? Because somewhere inside you, you remember, there was a time you saw women as goddesses, as mystery, as beauty incarnate. And there was a time you saw yourself as more than just a man. You were a protector, a dreamer, a soul on a mission. But the mirror cracked, and with each session, each relapse, each quiet shame, it cracks a little more. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Porn doesn't just affect your desires, it affects your dignity. It makes you live small. Why? Because the part of your soul that was made for honor, for strength, discipline, spiritual fire, is constantly being asked to kneel. You know this isn't about sex anymore. It's about who you're letting yourself become. And the scariest part, over time, you begin to forget there was ever anything different. That's how deep the programming goes. You start to think, maybe this is just who I am. Maybe I'm not meant for real love. Maybe I'll always feel this emptiness. But that's the lie. That's the trap. That's the system keeping you docile, addicted, asleep. The soul doesn't thrive on surface pleasure. It thrives on truth. And the truth is, you were never meant to be this hollow. You were built for depth, for intimacy, for real connection with women, with yourself, with God. But none of that is possible when the mirror's broken. Now here's the good news. It can be restored. Neuroplasticity is real. The brain can change. The cracks in the mirror can be healed, but it won't happen by accident. You have to detox the mind, untrain the pathways of lust, numbness, and escape. Rebuild your capacity to sit in presence, to feel again, to see beauty without reducing it to stimulation. You have to remember what it means to see clearly. When you remove the poison, when you fast from the false, when you sit with your own thoughts, your own wounds, your own silence, that's when the mirror begins to repair. That's when the soul starts whispering again, not in loud commands, not in shame or guilt, but in remembrance. You'll remember the warmth of real touch, the thrill of authentic connection, the feeling of a woman's presence, not her body, but her essence. You'll remember how deep love can go when it's not filtered through pixels and perversion. And most importantly, you'll remember who you are. Not a slave to urges, not a shameful addict, but a soul in recovery, a king rebuilding his crown, a mirror being polished, one honest day at a time. So ask yourself now, what kind of reflection do you want your mind to carry? Because whatever you show it, whatever you feed it, is what your soul will begin to reflect back. Choose wisely. Chapter 6, Anxiety, Depression, and the Dopamine Graveyard. There's a reason why, after you indulge, the world seems less vibrant. It's not just the guilt or the shame or the fleeting moment of relief that you feel afterward. No, it's deeper than that. It's the wound that has been left in your brain, the silent damage done each time you flood it with artificial dopamine. Every orgasm brings an overwhelming rush. It feels like a moment of euphoria, like the world is alive with color and sound. For a fleeting instant, you're high on life, or so it seems. But that's the illusion. Here's the truth. Each time you indulge, you are not simply feeding a desire. You're burning out your brain's ability to feel pleasure. Let me explain. Dopamine is the chemical that gives you motivation. It's the driver behind pleasure, the motivator of action, the reward in the reward system. It's essential for everything from eating to sleeping, working to loving. But what happens when you overfeed it? What happens when you chase pleasure repeatedly, without rest, without balance? The brain's receptors burn out. In other words, the more you indulge in artificial highs, whether it's porn, masturbation, or other fleeting pleasures, the more you desensitize your brain's capacity to feel joy. And that's when the spiral begins. You see, in a normal state, when you experience something rewarding, a delicious meal, a warm hug, a win at work, dopamine releases in moderation. It makes you feel alive. It motivates you to pursue more, to engage with the world. But when you repeatedly flood your system with dopamine from external sources, like pornography, you're setting yourself up for disaster. Here's how it works. Your brain gets used to constant stimulation. Porn is like a buffet for dopamine. Every time you click, every time you indulge, you get that satisfying hit of feel-good chemicals. But over time, your brain starts needing more to reach that same high. You start to chase bigger and better thrills, more extreme content, more frequent releases. Soon, ordinary pleasures don't feel enough. The food you once loved, bland. The touch of a loved one, empty. Joy itself, fading into the distance. The truth is, dopamine works in a delicate balance, and once it's out of whack, everything else falls apart. You may think it's just a harmless habit, but in reality, you're setting yourself up for emotional decay. The high you once chased becomes the hole you dig deeper and deeper. Anxiety, depression. It's not just a side effect, it's the inevitable result of chasing dopamine overload. You begin to feel a deep, gnawing emptiness. The world loses its color. Your emotions dull and the light inside you begins to flicker. The problem is that the more you try to fill the void with fleeting pleasures, the more the void grows. It's like a graveyard for your emotional health. Each hit, each indulgence adds to the darkness, making it harder to climb out. And here's the worst part. You don't even realize what's happening until it's too late. It starts with moments of boredom. Then comes the impulse, the craving for that rush, that spark of pleasure. So you give in. You chase the dopamine. For a few minutes, it feels like you've won. You're high again, but it's a lie. What you don't realize is that each time you give in, your brain gets a little more numb. The next time you feel anxious or sad or empty, you won't know how to cope because the normal sources of pleasure can't reach you anymore. Food, touch, nature, love, all of it will seem dull in comparison to the high you've conditioned yourself to seek. The brain's natural reward systems, they're broken. You may even start feeling that something is missing, but you won't know exactly what. The loneliness, the anxiety, the depression, they're all symptoms of a brain that's overstimulated and underfed. Your mind is trying to tell you something, but you're too numb to hear it. You're not truly living anymore. You're stuck in a dopamine trap, chasing fleeting highs, hoping for relief, but sinking deeper into despair. And the worst part? The more you try to numb the pain with short-term fixes, the less you feel. You're in a cycle now, one that feeds on itself. The depression deepens, the anxiety builds, and the high that once felt so good, now it's just an empty echo. But there's a way out. It's not easy, and it won't happen overnight, but it starts with one powerful word: enough. Enough of the cycle, enough of the addiction, enough of the chase. It's time to reclaim your brain. It's time to restore the balance. You're not broken. You're simply disconnected from your true source of pleasure, the kind that doesn't need to come from a screen, a click, or a quick fix. The real pleasure comes from presence. It comes from intimacy. It comes from you, your body, your mind, your soul, fully engaged in life. So stop chasing highs that will never satisfy you. Instead, start building a life that gives you lasting joy. Start by giving your brain the rest it needs, the real pleasure it craves. Start by saying, enough. And with that simple act, you'll begin to find your way back to yourself, back to the world of color, warmth, and deep connection. The spiral doesn't have to define you. You have the power to climb out. But first, you must choose to stop digging. With 7, the masculine wound. There's a wound many men carry, but it's rarely ever discussed. It's not the kind of wound you can see on the surface. It's buried deep beneath the skin, invisible to the naked eye. But make no mistake, this wound is real. It's a masculine wound, a longing, a hunger to be strong, purposeful, focused. But here's the tragic reality. No one teaches men how to heal this wound. No one shows them what it means to be truly masculine, to stand in their own power without relying on external distractions. So what happens? They numb it, they suppress it. They try to fill the emptiness inside with something, anything, that feels like relief. And for many men, porn becomes the solution, the escape, the comfort, the silent companion that never rejects them. At least, not until the guilt sets in. The pain of unfulfilled potential. The longing is subtle, almost imperceptible. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It starts as a faint ache deep within, a desire to be more than what you are, to be strong, to be present, to be a man who is fully aligned with his purpose. But for many men, that longing remains just that, a longing. Because the world tells them they have to figure it out on their own. They are taught to toughen up, to be strong in the traditional sense of the word. But strength in this context is often equated with silence. The suffering is hidden. The real struggles, mental, emotional, spiritual, remain buried beneath the surface. Men are often conditioned to think that showing their wounds, their vulnerabilities, is a sign of weakness. The idea that real strength is in stoic isolation becomes ingrained in their psyche. The yearning for purpose and direction can feel like an unreachable dream, something reserved for others, not for them. And so they search for answers in places that will never provide them. Porn, masturbation, temporary distractions that promise momentary relief but never last. The false father. Here's the problem. Porn becomes the father many men never had. It gives them the attention they crave. It provides a fleeting sense of power, control, and validation. For a few minutes, it feels like they found the answer. It's something that doesn't judge them, doesn't demand anything in return. It doesn't ask for emotional intimacy or connection. It's an escape from the reality that they can't seem to change. The father they never had in real life seems to show up, but it's a hollow version, a distorted, artificial representation of what masculinity should be. A quick fix, a distraction, but not a solution. Porn is the counterfeit father figure. It promises control, but it only delivers emptiness. It tells men they don't need to confront their feelings, their real needs, their purpose. It encourages them to suppress their true emotions and desires, burying them deeper until they forget what they were even searching for in the first place. The masculine fire is not dead. But here's the truth. The masculine fire is not dead. It's buried. It's buried under layers of broken promises, self-doubt, fear, and emotional numbing. The authentic masculine essence, the one that is grounded, centered, and purposeful, remains alive inside you, even if you don't recognize it anymore. It is alive, but dormant, waiting for you to awaken it, waiting for you to remember who you truly are. Men are meant to lead, to build, to create with their hands, hearts, and minds. They are meant to stand strong in the face of adversity, to protect, to love, to be a force of integrity and vision. But somewhere along the way, this truth became clouded, distorted, forgotten. The world told men they had to be strong in ways that didn't truly honor their power. Instead, it gave them tools to hide from their true selves. Porn, drugs, alcohol, endless distractions, all these became crutches for men who didn't know how to stand in their own power. The desire to become a man of purpose never left. It's there, deep inside. It just needs to be uncovered. The mask of the modern man. The modern man wears a mask. On the outside, he's often quiet, stoic, emotionally distant, sometimes even jaded. He's expected to perform, to be successful, to have all the answers, all the money, all the status. But underneath, he's struggling. He's lost. He feels like he's not enough. He looks at his life and sees only broken promises and unfulfilled potential. Maybe he's tried to find purpose in his career. Maybe he's tried to fill the void with relationships. But deep down, he knows there's something more he's meant to be doing. There's something more inside of him that he hasn't tapped into yet. That's the masculine fire. That's the soul's calling to step into a higher version of himself. Digging out the masculine power. So, how do we dig out the masculine power that has been buried? It starts with honesty, with facing the truth about who you've become and who you were meant to be. It means acknowledging that the wounds are real, but they don't define you. It means taking responsibility for your life, your decisions, your actions, your growth. It means finding healing in ways that don't involve distractions or numbing. Healing through confronting the past, through emotional vulnerability, through authentic connections with others. Healing through semen retention, self-discipline, and purposeful living. The masculine is not a myth, it's a force. It's inside every man, waiting to be recognized, respected, and awakened. But you must choose to wake it up. You must decide to dig beneath the layers of numbness and distraction and connect with the power that has always been within you. The journey won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Because once you unearth the true masculine, you will know what it feels like to stand in your full power to be a man of purpose, vision, and integrity. And in doing so, you will finally heal the masculine wound that has been silently bleeding all this time. Chapter 8. The body keeps the secrets. Chronic fatigue, brain fog, back pain. These are just a few of the physical signs that often go unnoticed, dismissed as the burdens of modern life. But what if these symptoms are not mere coincidences? What if they are the body's way of sending you a message that something deeper is at play? Your body was never meant to be drained daily, and yet you might be doing just that without even realizing it. Every unnecessary release of energy, every moment spent indulging in fleeting pleasures, acts like a slow, invisible leak in your energetic field. Each time you give in, your body takes a hit, and over time, these hits accumulate. The energy that could have been used for focus, strength, and vitality is depleted, leaving you with nothing but exhaustion and confusion. In this world, we often hear people talk about how tired they are, how they can't focus, how they can't seem to get through the day without feeling weighed down. These issues are often chalked up to poor sleep, stress, or diet. But the real issue may lie somewhere else entirely. What if your body's fatigue is a direct result of the unseen energy being drained out of you every single day? And what if the solution to the fog, the aches, and the constant fatigue lies not in chasing another energy drink or another pill, but in recovering the energy that has been siphoned from you? That's exactly what the old masters understood, long before science caught up with the truth of how our bodies and minds work. They practiced celibacy, not as a form of suffering, but as a means of storing power. They recognized the sacredness of energy and its immense potential when preserved. Your body, like your mind, is a vessel of immense power. We often think of energy as an abstract concept, something intangible, but it's real, and it's physical. Every cell in your body vibrates with energy. Your organs, your tissues, your muscles, all of them rely on a steady supply of life force to function properly. When this energy is constantly leaking out, whether through indulgence, distraction, or overexertion, the body struggles to replenish it fast enough. The result is an overall sense of being drained, depleted, and unable to function at your full potential. Imagine your body as a battery. It holds a charge, a vital force that fuels your every action, thought, and decision. Now imagine that every time you release energy unnecessarily, you're draining that battery just a little bit at a time. At first, it may seem like no big deal. You might not notice the small leaks, the tiny losses that happen day after day, but over time, those small leaks add up. Your battery is running low, and you can feel it. You feel sluggish, tired, distracted. Your mind can't focus like it used to. Your body aches for no apparent reason. You wonder why you don't have the energy to do the things you used to love, or even just to get through the day. Now picture what it would be like if you could store that energy instead of releasing it. The old masters knew that by holding on to their vital energy, they could use it for something greater. They didn't view celibacy as a deprivation, but as a preservation of their life force. When energy is held back, it doesn't just stagnate. It transforms, it heightens, it amplifies. The body becomes a wellspring of power, and the mind becomes clear, focused, and sharp. There is no more sluggishness, no more fog, no more back pain that doesn't have a clear cause. There is simply vitality, true vitality, a vitality that is not fleeting but sustainable. Think for a moment about what you could accomplish if your body was fully energized, fully restored. Imagine waking up each day feeling clear-headed, full of purpose, with the strength to take on whatever comes your way. No more brain fog to cloud your vision, no more fatigue weighing down your every step. Imagine the work you could do, the relationships you could build, the goals you could achieve if your body was functioning at its highest potential. The difference would be night and day. And the key to unlocking this energy doesn't lie in some external pill or quick fix. It lies in the choices you make every day, the choices about where you direct your energy and how you preserve it. This is why the body keeps the secrets. Your body is a reflection of your energy, and every action, every thought, every indulgence leaves an imprint on it. It's not just about what you put into your body physically, it's about what you allow to drain you energetically. Every time you give in to an urge that doesn't serve your higher purpose, you lose a little bit of yourself. But when you start to withhold that energy, to guard it, to channel it towards things that truly matter, your body responds in kind. It remembers what it feels like to be whole, to be vital. It remembers its true potential. The old masters understood this. They knew that true strength, both physical and spiritual, comes from the ability to retain and harness energy, not to waste it. They saw the power in holding back, in preserving the sacred life force that flows through every living being. They didn't just understand this intellectually, they felt it in their bones. They knew that every time they refrained from releasing that energy unnecessarily, they were doing something profound for themselves. They were nourishing their bodies, their minds, and their spirits. And in doing so, they became untouchable. They became forces of nature, grounded in their own power. The truth is that you were never meant to be drained. You were never meant to feel constantly exhausted, weak, or unclear. Those feelings are not your natural state. They are the result of leaks in your energy, leaks that can be repaired. The solution isn't about fighting fatigue with more stimulants or distractions. The solution lies in learning how to preserve your energy and direct it where it truly matters. When you do this, you will feel the difference. Your body will feel stronger, clearer, more resilient. Your mind will sharpen. Your spirit will rise. The power was always inside you. It's time to stop draining it and start reclaiming it. Your body is waiting for you to remember. It's waiting for you to restore it. This isn't about perfection. It's about power. The moment you realize this truth, you begin to understand the immense potential you carry within you. Too often, society tells us that we need to be perfect, that we must control every thought, every feeling, every action to fit into some narrow mold of what success, strength, or spirituality looks like. This is a lie, a false narrative that keeps you bound, trapped in the very chains you're trying to escape. Perfection is an illusion. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be powerful. And that power, the true power that can set you free, has always been within you. You've simply been misdirecting it. The energy that once enslaved you, that once pulled you into the depths of addiction, isn't something you need to destroy or repress. No. That energy is yours to harness, to transmute. You've been taught to view it as something shameful, something to be hidden, a source of guilt and weakness. But in reality, it is a fire, one that can either burn you or light your way. The choice is yours. The very energy that once made you feel powerless can now become the very force that propels you into your destiny. To transmute this energy, to turn it from a source of destruction into a force for creation, requires a shift in perspective. It demands that you stop seeing your urges, your desires, your weaknesses as things to be ashamed of, and start seeing them as raw material for your greatness. Every time you feel that pull, that temptation, you have a choice. You can either give in and continue feeding the cycle of depletion, or you can take that energy and channel it into something greater. Think about it. Every creative act, every piece of art, every innovation, every breakthrough was once just an impulse. That initial spark, that surge of energy, had to be directed. Without direction, it would have burned out, left unchecked. But when the energy is focused, when it's funneled into a purpose greater than immediate gratification, that's when magic happens. That's when your true power begins to emerge. Write, build, speak, lead. These are the outlets that allow you to channel your energy into something tangible, something that serves not just yourself but others. Your desires, when properly redirected, can fuel your creativity. They can push you into action, into creation, into the building of something that lasts. What if you took the very fire that once pulled you downward and used it to create? What if the same intensity, the same drive that led you to moments of weakness became the driving force behind your success, behind your mission, behind your purpose? The power you feel in your body is real. You can feel it pulsing through your veins, through every thought, every action. But right now, it's scattered. You've been feeding it in all the wrong places, allowing it to dissipate into nothing. It's like a river that's been dammed. Its water flowing in all directions except where it was meant to go. But once you break through that dam, once you stop resisting, stop fighting, stop hiding from the truth, you'll find that energy flowing again with purpose. It will no longer drown you, no longer drain you. Instead, it will build you up. It will carry you forward. The key is in choosing where that energy flows. But first, you must choose. You must make a decision, and that decision will define the course of your life. The path of least resistance, the one that requires no effort, is the path of addiction. It's the easy road. It's the road where you give in, where you let your impulses dictate your actions, where you allow your desires to control you. It's easy to fall into this trap because it feels good in the moment. It feels like relief, like escape, but the cost is steep. It drains you, it wears you down, it leaves you empty. The other path is harder. It's the path of self-discipline, of self-mastery. It's the path where you don't just react to your impulses, You control them. You take that energy, that fire, and you channel it into something bigger, something more meaningful. This path requires effort. It requires sacrifice. It requires you to get comfortable with discomfort, to face your shadows, to confront the parts of yourself that you've tried to suppress. But this is the path that leads to power. Choosing this path doesn't mean you'll be perfect. You'll stumble, you'll falter. But the key is in the choice itself. You're making the choice to rise above your urges, to rise above the cravings and impulses that have held you captive for so long. With every choice, you reclaim your power. With every choice, you become more than you were yesterday. And little by little, you begin to tap into the limitless potential that has always been inside you. This is not about perfection. It's about the willingness to step into your true power, to step into your destiny. And that's what they fear. They fear the moment when you realize that you are the one who has been holding yourself back. They fear the moment when you break free from the chains that have bound you, when you stop playing small and start playing for keeps. When you make this choice, when you decide to transmute the energy that once enslaved you into the power that will set you free, you become a force to be reckoned with. You become the weapon they fear. Not because you've mastered perfection, but because you've chosen to tap into the power that was always there. You've chosen to become the creator of your own fate, the master of your own destiny. You've chosen to stop living as a prisoner of your desires and start living as a sovereign being, fully in control of your energy and your life. In the end, this isn't about perfection, it's about power. And when you choose to transmute your energy, to channel it into creation, into purpose, you will become unstoppable. You will no longer be a slave to your impulses. You will no longer be weak, distracted, or controlled. You will be the one who controls, the one who creates, the one who leads, the one who rises. And that, my friend, is the power they fear. The battle you've been fighting isn't a random one. You're not some casualty of circumstance. You are not broken. You were chosen. And that's why the war has been so intense, so relentless. The world doesn't target the weak, it targets the strong, the ones with potential, the ones with something to lose. You are one of them. This war, the one that is played out within you, is not some accident. It's by design. The ones who are meant for greatness are the ones who face the hardest battles. Not everyone is attacked like you have been. Not everyone is targeted by the darkness that seeks to bury your light. But you are different. And that's why they're trying to keep you down. When you realize this, when you understand that your struggle has purpose, that is the moment your awakening begins. The fight you're in isn't just a battle for your soul, it's a battle for your power, your true power. And now, knowing what you know, you can never unknow it. This knowledge, once it settles deep in your bones, changes everything. It shifts the very way you see the world, the way you see yourself. You are no longer a passive participant in the game of life. You are now aware of the forces at play. You now understand the stakes. And understanding those stakes means that every decision from here on out carries weight. The next time the screen calls you, the next time temptation rises like an old friend, familiar and comforting, ask yourself, what if this is the moment I change forever? What if this time is the one where you choose differently? What if this is the turning point, the pivotal moment where everything shifts and you reclaim your power once and for all? That question holds more weight than any temptation, any fleeting pleasure could ever offer. It is the question that holds the key to your freedom. Because in that moment, you're not just walking away from a screen, from a habit, or from an urge. You're walking away from the chains that have bound you. You're walking away from the lies that have kept you small. You're walking away from the energy that has drained you for so long. And by walking away, you don't just win a battle. You don't just break a chain. You become something far more dangerous. You become a force to be reckoned with. Imagine for a moment what that power would look like. What does it mean to be dangerous? Not in the sense of harm, but in the sense of being unstoppable, unshakable, and fully alive. What happens when you stop giving your energy away to things that don't serve you? What happens when you realize that every time you choose to reclaim your power, you get closer to becoming the version of yourself that has always been buried beneath the layers of distractions, addictions, and self-doubt. This isn't just a fight for control. This is a fight for your very soul, for your life's purpose, for the destiny you were born to fulfill. When you choose to walk away, you're not just rejecting a fleeting desire. You're embracing your true potential. You are acknowledging that the life you've been living up until now, the one where your energy has been drained and your focus scattered, is not the life you are meant to live. You are choosing to step into a higher version of yourself. And let's be clear, this choice isn't easy. It's not supposed to be. Transformation never is, but it is necessary. Every step you take away from the screen, away from the addiction, is a step toward your true self. And with each step, you become more dangerous to the forces that have tried to control you. You become a warrior, not because of how you fight, but because of how you choose to live. You become dangerous not because you wield a weapon, but because you no longer tolerate being anyone's pawn. The awakening begins with one choice. It starts with the decision to stop accepting the narrative that has been written for you, the story that keeps you trapped in a cycle of addiction, shame, and self-doubt. The moment you choose to change, you begin to write your own story. You stop letting the world, the screen, the temptations dictate who you are. You take back the pen and you start writing the story of your own greatness. But that first choice, the one that leads to your awakening, is the hardest. It requires courage. It requires clarity. It requires you to believe in something greater than the immediate pleasure, the quick fix, the fleeting satisfaction that you've come to rely on. It requires you to trust that there is more waiting for on the other side, even though you can't see it yet. And once you make that choice, once you say to yourself, "This is the moment I change," everything else begins to fall into place. This isn't a one-time decision. It's a commitment, a lifestyle. Every time you make that choice, you strengthen your resolve. Every time you walk away from the temptation, you fortify your soul. Every time you say no to the fleeting pleasure, you say yes to your future. You say yes to the man you were always meant to be. And here's the beauty of it. As you continue to make these choices, as you continue to step into your power, you become more than just someone who overcame addiction. You become a living example of what's possible when you choose to awaken. You become a beacon of light in a world that desperately needs it. Your story will inspire others. Your strength will empower those around you to make the same choice. But remember, you're not just fighting for your own freedom. You're fighting for the freedom of those who are still trapped in the darkness. Every step you take towards your own awakening ripples out into the world. Your decision to walk away, to choose differently, is not just a personal victory. It's a collective victory. The world needs men like you. The world needs warriors who have chosen to fight for their soul, for their power, for their purpose. And the more men who make this choice, the more dangerous the world becomes to the forces that seek to keep us weak. The awakening begins with one choice, and that choice will change everything. It will change you. It will change the world. And once you've made that choice, once you've tasted the freedom that comes from reclaiming your energy and your power, you will never go back. You will never again be a slave to the screen, to the addiction, to the distractions. You will stand tall, a man reborn, a force to be reckoned with, and nothing will ever be the same. You were never meant to fight this battle on your own. The struggle you faced, the temptations that have tried to break you down, they've all been part of a greater plan. You are not alone in this fight. There is strength in the choices you make, and there is power in the support that's available to you. But ultimately, the victory is yours to claim. You were meant to win this war, not because it's easy, but because your spirit is designed for greatness. Let this be the beginning of your return, not just to discipline, but to something deeper, your divine self. The man you were always meant to be has always been there, buried beneath layers of distractions, false beliefs, and addictive patterns. Your soul has been waiting for you to remember who you truly are, to reclaim your power and walk in the fullness of your purpose. Now is the time to answer the call. The universe, your higher self, the divine energy that courses through you, all of it is calling you to rise. This is your moment. It's time to stop running from the truth and step into the power that's been waiting for you all along. Your awakening starts now.